So today I want to discuss something that almost nobody is paying attention to, and I find that extraordinary because what I am about to tell you could reshape this entire war overnight. Overnight, not in months, not in years, overnight. Everyone is focused on the bombs, everyone is focused on Iran, everyone is focused on the Strait of Hormuz and the oil prices and the aircraft carriers, and yes, those things matter. We have discussed them extensively. But while everyone is watching the explosions, something is happening quietly, behind closed doors, in palaces and ministries and back channels that the media cannot see. A country, a very important country, a country that America considers one of its closest allies, is secretly preparing to switch sides. Not publicly, not dramatically, not with a press conference or a declaration, but quietly, strategically, in ways that will only become visible when it is too late for America to do anything about it. And the country I am talking about, is Saudi Arabia. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking, Professor Jiang, that is impossible. Saudi Arabia is America's most important ally in the Middle East. The Saudis buy billions of dollars of American weapons. American military bases are on Saudi soil. The entire petrodollar system is built on the Saudi-American alliance. There is no way Saudi Arabia switches sides. And I understand that reaction. I understand it completely. Because if you look at the surface, at the public statements, at the arms deals, at the diplomatic handshakes, it looks like Saudi Arabia is firmly in the American camp. But I am not interested in the surface. I am interested in what is happening underneath the surface. And underneath the surface, the ground is shifting. Rapidly, dangerously, and irreversibly. So let me walk you through this very carefully. First, I am going to show you the cracks in the Saudi-American alliance that have been building for years. Second, I'm going to show you what Saudi Arabia has been doing with China and Russia behind America's back. Third, I am going to show you how this war has accelerated Saudi Arabia's calculations. And fourth, I am going to show you the historical pattern, because this has happened before. Allies switching sides at the critical moment is one of the oldest patterns in geopolitical history. Let us begin. First, I need you to understand something about the Saudi-American relationship that the media never explains properly. The media presents this relationship as a friendship, as a partnership based on shared values and mutual respect. That is complete nonsense. The Saudi-American relationship is not a friendship. It is a transaction, a deal, a business arrangement. And like all business arrangements, it only survives as long as both sides believe they are getting a good deal. So what was the deal? The original deal was made in 1945, when President Franklin Roosevelt met King Abdulaziz ibn Saud on the USS Quincy and the Suez Canal. The deal was simple. America gets access to Saudi oil. In exchange, America guarantees the survival of the Saudi royal family. That is the deal. Oil for protection. This deal was updated in 1973 when Nixon and Kissinger created the petrodollar system. The Saudis would sell all oil in dollars. They would recycle their oil revenues into American treasury bonds and American investments. In exchange, America would provide unlimited military protection and unlimited weapons sales. Now, for 50 years, this deal worked. It worked because both sides were getting what they wanted. America got the petrodollar, the Saudis got protection, everyone was happy, but something changed. Several things changed, and I want you to understand each one, because together they explain why Saudi Arabia is reconsidering everything. The first crack, September 11th, 2001. 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudi citizens. Osama bin Laden was Saudi. The funding networks traced back to Saudi Arabia. And what happened? America invaded Afghanistan. And then Iraq, not Saudi Arabia. America punished everyone except Saudi Arabia. But here is what most people do not know. Inside the American political system, anger at Saudi Arabia grew enormously after 9/11. The 9/11 Commission report had 28 classified pages about Saudi involvement that were kept secret for 15 years. American families of 9/11 victims sued Saudi Arabia. American politicians from both parties began questioning the alliance. The Saudis noticed. They noticed that America's commitment to the alliance was not as unconditional as they had believed. They noticed that American public opinion had turned against them. And they began, quietly, to ask the question, what happens if America decides we are the next target? What happens if American public opinion demands action against us? Who protects us then? That question, that seed of doubt, was planted in 2001, and it has been growing ever since. The second crack, the Arab Spring, 2011. This is when the Saudis truly began to lose trust in America. Egypt, Hosni Mubarak had been America's closest Arab ally for 30 years. He did everything America asked. He made peace with Israel. He supported American operations in the region. He was loyal. And when the protests started in Tahrir Square, what did America do? America abandoned him. Barack Obama went on television and said, "Mubarak must go." Just like that, 30 years of loyalty, discarded in one press conference. The Saudi royal family watched this and they were horrified. Because if America could abandon Mubarak after 30 years of loyalty, America could abandon the House of Saud too. The Saudis realized that American protection was conditional, that American loyalty was temporary, that when the political winds in Washington change, alliances mean nothing. King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia was reportedly furious. He reportedly told American officials that what they did to Mubarak was unforgivable. And from that exact moment, Saudi Arabia began to diversify its alliances. Not publicly, not dramatically, but the process started. The third crack, the Iran nuclear deal, 2015. Obama negotiated the JCPOA, the nuclear agreement with Iran, and he did it without consulting Saudi Arabia, without even informing Saudi Arabia until the deal was nearly complete. The Saudis viewed this as the ultimate betrayal. America was making a deal with Saudi Arabia's greatest enemy, Iran, the country that the Saudis see as an existential threat, and America did not even ask their opinion. The message to Riyadh was clear. America will pursue its own interests regardless of what Saudi Arabia wants. Saudi Arabia's security concerns are secondary to American diplomatic objectives. Now, Trump came in and canceled the deal. The Saudis were relieved. But then Biden came in and tried to revive it. And then Trump came back and started a war with Iran. The policy whiplash, the unpredictability, the constant changes in American strategy convinced the Saudis of something very important. America is unreliable, not because America is weak, not because America is dishonest, but because American foreign policy changes every 4 years. Every new president reverses the previous president's commitments. No deal with America lasts longer than one presidential term. And for Saudi Arabia, a monarchy that thinks in decades and centuries, a partner that changes its mind every 4 years is not a reliable partner. The fourth crack, and this one is the most important, the Khashoggi affair, 2018. Jamal Khashoggi, a Saudi journalist, was murdered inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. The CIA concluded that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, directly ordered the killing. And what happened? America condemned it. Congress demanded action. Biden called Saudi Arabia a pariah state during his presidential campaign. He said he would make them pay the price. He said there would be consequences. Now, ultimately, the consequences were minimal, but the damage was done. MBS understood that America, at any moment, for domestic political reasons, that could turn on him personally. Not on Saudi Arabia, on him, on the crown prince, on the future king. And that changes everything. Because MBS is not just the crown prince, MBS is the Saudi government. He controls everything. The military, the intelligence services, the economy, Vision 2030, everything runs through MBS. And if MBS believes that America might one day decide to remove him, to regime change him, to support his rivals within the royal family, then MBS has every incentive to find alternative protectors. And he has found them now. Let me show you what Saudi Arabia has been doing while America was not paying attention, because this is where the story gets truly remarkable. In December 2022, something extraordinary happened. Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Saudi Arabia, not a quiet diplomatic visit, a state visit, the full ceremony, the red carpet, the honor guard, the bilateral meetings, the joint statements, 3 days of intensive diplomacy at the highest level. And what came out of that visit? A comprehensive strategic partnership between China and Saudi Arabia, investment agreements, technology cooperation, military cooperation discussions, and this is the critical point, an agreement to explore selling Saudi oil in Chinese yuan instead of US dollars. Do you understand what that means? Saudi Arabia, the country that created the petrodollar system in 1973, is now discussing selling oil in Chinese currency. This is not a minor adjustment. This is a potential earthquake in the global financial system. But that is not all. Let me tell you what else Saudi Arabia has been doing. In 2023, Saudi Arabia joined BRICS, the economic bloc led by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. This is the bloc that is explicitly building an alternative to the Western-dominated financial system, an alternative to the dollar, an alternative to SWIFT, an alternative to the IMF and the World Bank, and Saudi Arabia joined it. In 2023, Saudi Arabia and Iran restored diplomatic relations after 7 years of hostility. And who brokered this deal? Not America, China. China brokered the Saudi-Iran reconciliation. Think about what that means. The two most important countries in the Persian Gulf, countries that were bitter enemies, made peace through Chinese mediation. America was not even in the room. In 2024, Saudi Arabia began purchasing advanced weapon systems from China, not to replace American weapons, not yet, but to diversify, to reduce dependence on American military equipment, because military dependence on America means political dependence on America. And MBS is systematically reducing that dependence. In 2024, Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, the Public Investment Fund, which has nearly $1 trillion in assets, began shifting its investment strategy. More investments in China, more investments in Asia, more investments in non-dollar assets, less dependence on American markets. Each one of these moves, individually, can be explained away. Oh, the Saudis are just hedging their bets. Oh, the Saudis are just maximizing their options. Oh, this is normal diplomatic diversification. But together these moves tell a very clear story. Saudi Arabia is systematically building the infrastructure to survive without America, to operate without the dollar, to protect itself without American weapons, to align with the emerging power, China, while gradually distancing itself from the declining power, America. This is not hedging, this is preparation. Preparation for the switch. Now, let me show you how this war has accelerated everything. This war between America and Iran has put Saudi Arabia in the most dangerous position it has faced since the founding of the kingdom. And I want you to understand exactly why. Saudi Arabia sits directly across the Persian Gulf from Iran. Saudi oil infrastructure, Abqaiq, Kurais, Ras Tanura, these are the facilities that produce 10% of the world's oil, and they are within range of Iranian missiles and drones. We already know that Iran can hit these targets. In September 2019, before this war even started, Iranian drones struck the Abqaiq oil processing facility. The attack knocked out 50% of Saudi oil production in a single day. The most devastating attack on energy infrastructure in modern history, and the Patriot missile defense systems, American-made, American-deployed, did not stop a single drone. Not one. Now, in the current war, Iran has demonstrated capabilities far beyond what it showed in 2019. Longer-range drones, more sophisticated missiles, better targeting, greater numbers. The Saudis are watching this, and they are making a very simple calculation. If Iran decides to target Saudi oil infrastructure during this war, America cannot protect it. The Patriot failed in 2019. It is failing now against Iranian drones over other targets. And the American aircraft carriers that were supposed to dominate the Persian Gulf have retreated. So the Saudi calculation is this: America started a war with Iran. That war put Saudi Arabia at direct risk. America cannot protect Saudi Arabia from the consequences of that war. And America did not even consult Saudi Arabia before starting the war. This is an intolerable position for any country. Imagine your supposed protector starts a fight with your neighbor. The fight puts your house at risk. Your protector cannot actually protect your house, and your protector did not even ask you if you wanted this fight. What would you do? You would find a new protector, or you would make a deal with the neighbor, and that is exactly what Saudi Arabia is doing. Now here is where the intelligence gets really interesting, and I want to be careful here because this involves information from sources that I need to protect. There are strong indications that Saudi Arabia has been communicating with Iran through back channels since this war started. Not to support Iran publicly, not to oppose America publicly, but to send a very specific message. The message is, we did not want this war. We are not part of this war. We do not want to be targeted. And Iran's response? Iran has been very careful not to target Saudi Arabia directly in this war. Despite having the capability, despite Saudi Arabia hosting American military bases that are being used to conduct strikes against Iran, Iran has shown remarkable restraint towards Saudi Arabia. Why? Because Iran understands something that America does not. Iran understands that Saudi Arabia is gettable. that Saudi Arabia can be pulled away from the American alliance. And the way to do that is not through force. It is through fear combined with an alternative offer. The fear: we can destroy your oil infrastructure anytime we want. You know this. We proved it in 2019. And your American protectors cannot stop us. The alternative offer: join our side. Join BRICS. Sell your oil in yuan. Align with China. And we will never threaten you again. We will be partners. We will be neighbors. We will build a Middle East without American interference. This is the offer on the table. And everything I see, everything in the diplomatic signals, in the economic moves, in the military positioning, tells me that Saudi Arabia is seriously considering it. Now, I promised you history, because this pattern of allies switching sides is not new. It is one of the oldest and most consequential patterns in geopolitical history. The first example: Italy in World War I. Italy was part of the Triple Alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary. When the war started in 1914, everyone expected Italy to fight alongside its allies. Instead, Italy waited. It watched. It calculated. And in 1915, Italy switched sides. It joined Britain and France. Why? Because Britain and France offered Italy a better deal, more territory, more influence, a better post-war position. Italy did exactly what Saudi Arabia is doing right now. It assessed which side offered the better future and switched accordingly. Loyalty meant nothing. Interest meant everything. The second example: Egypt in the Cold War. In the 1950s and 1960s, Egypt under Nasser was the Soviet Union's most important ally in the Middle East. Soviet weapons, Soviet advisors, Soviet money. Egypt was firmly in the Soviet camp. And then Anwar Sadat came to power. And Sadat looked at the situation and made a calculation. The Soviet Union was declining. America was stronger. America could offer more. And in 1972, Sadat expelled all Soviet military advisors from Egypt. 15,000 Soviet personnel gone overnight. And within a few years, Egypt had switched completely to the American side. The Camp David Accords, peace with Israel, American weapons replacing Soviet weapons, a complete reversal. This is exactly the same pattern. The ally of a declining power switches to the rising power. The transition is sudden, it is shocking, and it is irreversible. Now apply this pattern to today. Saudi Arabia is America's most important Arab ally, just as Egypt was the Soviet Union's most important Arab ally. And just as Egypt watched the Soviet Union decline and switch to America, Saudi Arabia is watching America decline and preparing to switch to China. The parallel is almost perfect. And if history is any guide, when the switch happens, it will happen fast. Not gradually, not over years, fast. Because once the decision is made, there is no advantage in delay. There is only advantage in speed and surprise. The third example, and this one is the most relevant of all: the Ottoman Empire in World War I. The Ottoman Empire had been closely aligned with Britain for most of the 19th century. Britain was the Ottoman Empire's primary trade partner. Britain helped modernize the Ottoman military. Britain invested in Ottoman infrastructure. The relationship was deep and long-standing, but when World War I approached, the Ottomans made a calculation. Britain was allied with Russia, the Ottoman Empire's historic enemy. Germany offered a better deal, better weapons, better terms, more respect for Ottoman sovereignty, and the Ottomans switched. They joined Germany and Austria-Hungary against Britain. This switch shocked the world. It changed the entire course of the war. And it happened because the Ottomans decided that their existing ally no longer served their interests. Saudi Arabia is in exactly this position today. America is allied with Israel, which the Saudis view as a regional threat. China offers a better deal, better terms, more respect for Saudi sovereignty, no lectures about human rights, no threats about Khashoggi, no demands about democratization, just business, just trade, just mutual benefit. The conditions for the switch are perfect. The historical pattern is clear. And the trigger is this war. Now let me explain what happens if Saudi Arabia switches, because the consequences are so enormous that I do not think most people have even begun to comprehend them. If Saudi Arabia stops selling oil exclusively in dollars, the petrodollar system collapses. Not weakens, collapses. Because Saudi Arabia is the petrodollar. Saudi Arabia is the foundation of the entire system. Without Saudi Arabia, there is no petrodollar. And without the petrodollar, America loses the ability to print money without consequence. America loses the ability to run massive deficits. America loses the ability to fund its military empire. The entire financial architecture of American global dominance unravels. We are talking about the end of American economic hegemony, not in 50 years, not in 20 years, within this decade, because once Saudi Arabia moves, every other Gulf state follows. Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain. They all follow Saudi Arabia. They always have, they always will. And then what? Then the dollar falls. Not to zero. The dollar does not disappear, but it loses its special status. It becomes just another currency. And an America without the petrodollar is an America that cannot afford 800 military bases around the world. An America that cannot afford 11 aircraft carrier groups. An America that cannot afford to fight wars on the other side of the planet. This is the real consequence of Saudi Arabia switching sides, not a diplomatic embarrassment, an economic revolution, a complete restructuring of global power. And here is the most extraordinary thing. It is already happening, not in the future, right now. The UN oil deals, the BRICS membership, the Chinese strategic partnership, the diplomatic channels with Iran, the sovereign wealth fund diversification. It is all happening right now. The switch is not coming. The switch is underway. We are living through it in real time. Now, I want to address the counter-argument, because I believe in intellectual honesty, and there is a counter-argument. Some analysts say that Saudi Arabia will never truly leave the American alliance because Saudi Arabia depends on American weapons. The Saudi military uses American fighter jets, American tanks, American missiles. Switching away from American weapons takes decades. You cannot just swap one military system for another overnight. And this is a fair point. It is a very fair point. In 2020, I would have said this argument is strong enough to keep Saudi Arabia in the American camp for at least another generation. But this war has weakened this argument catastrophically, because what has this war shown? It has shown that American weapons do not work. The Patriot failed, the F-35 was detected, the aircraft carrier retreated, billions of dollars of American military technology neutralized by Iranian drones and missiles. So the Saudi calculation is now, we are dependent on weapons that do not work. Our expensive American air defense cannot stop a $50,000 drone. Our expensive American fighter jets are being detected by Iranian radar. What exactly are we paying for? And China is right there, offering alternatives. Chinese drones that are cheaper and arguably just as effective. Chinese air defense systems. Chinese missiles. Not as advanced as American systems on paper, perhaps, but at a fraction of the cost. And unlike American weapons, Chinese weapons come without political conditions. No human rights lectures, no congressional approval processes, no risk that the weapons will be withdrawn because of a Washington Post article about a journalist. The military dependency that was supposed to lock Saudi Arabia into the American alliance is weakening, not gone, but weakening. And every failure of American weapons in this war accelerates that weakening. So let me bring this all together. And let me give you my assessment of the timeline. Saudi Arabia is not going to hold a press conference tomorrow and announce that it is switching sides. That is not how this works. This is a gradual process, a process of creating alternatives, building new relationships, diversifying dependencies, and slowly, carefully, shifting weight from one alliance to another. But the direction is clear. The momentum is clear. And this war has accelerated the timeline dramatically. Here is what I expect to happen over the next 12 to 24 months. Saudi Arabia will increase oil sales in yuan, not all oil, but a growing percentage. Saudi Arabia will deepen its strategic partnership with China, more investment, more technology cooperation, more military discussions. Saudi Arabia will expand its role in BRICS and begin actively supporting the development of alternative financial systems. Saudi Arabia will maintain back-channel communication with Iran and quietly work toward a regional security arrangement that does not depend on America. And Saudi Arabia will gradually reduce its dependence on American weapons systems while diversifying its military suppliers. None of this will be announced. None of this will be dramatic. It will be quiet, gradual, almost invisible, until one day the world wakes up and realizes that Saudi Arabia is no longer an American ally, that the petrodollar is dead, that the foundation of American global power has been pulled out from under it. And on that day, people will say, how did this happen? How did we lose Saudi Arabia? And the answer will be simple. You did not lose Saudi Arabia. You pushed Saudi Arabia away. You pushed them away by abandoning Mubarak, by threatening MBS, by making deals with Iran without consulting them, by failing to protect them from drones, by starting a war that put them at risk without their consent. and by proving over and over and over again that American protection is unreliable, American loyalty is temporary, and American weapons do not work. That is how you lose your most important ally, not through enemy action, through your own incompetence. Now, I want to leave you with one final thought, and it is perhaps the most important thought of all. In the history of great power transitions, the moment when the key ally switches is always the tipping point. When Egypt switched from the Soviets to America, it was the beginning of the end for Soviet influence in the Middle East. When the Italian city-states switched from supporting the Holy Roman Empire to supporting France, it reshaped European politics for a century. The Saudi switch, when it comes, and it is coming, will be the tipping point of the American empire. Not the beginning of the end of the beginning of the end. The moment when the decline becomes irreversible, the moment when the dollar falls, the moment when the empire contracts, the moment when the world order changes. And the most remarkable thing about it is this: it will not happen because of anything China did. It will not happen because of anything Iran did. It will happen because of what America did to itself, to its own alliances, to its own credibility, to its own financial system. The country secretly preparing to switch sides is Saudi Arabia, and the country that pushed Saudi Arabia to switch is America. Okay, I think that is enough for today. Was this interesting? Good. Was this clear? Good. I will see you in the next class.